All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever wondered what happens in literally one of the most unyielding environments in the entire medical billing universe? Well, today, we're diving into Part 9 of our instructional explainer on Medicare claims processing. Specifically, we're going to master the mechanics behind payment floors, NCCI edits, and electronic funds transfers. Now, if you're the one responsible for processing claims sent to the federal government, you absolutely must understand that this workflow is rigid, it's strictly enforced, and honestly, it is completely unforgiving of errors. My goal with this explainer is to arm you with the exact knowledge you need to successfully navigate Medicare's incredibly polished claim handling process.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the chronological lifecycle framework we'll be following today. Strict claim standards, NCC edits, the statutory payment floor, EFT and reliability, contractor preferences, and we'll wrap it up with a quick summary and next steps.
All right, Section 1, Strict Claim Standards and Clean Claim Requirements.
So, at the very first stage of the claim lifecycle, before a claim can even enter Medicare's system, when its status is literally just pending submission, it has to hit absolute perfection across 3 critical steps. You think you can skip one? Yeah, think again. First, it has to meet the standard protocols for the specific procedures rendered. Second, you've got to definitively prove medical necessity. Medicare is simply not going to pay for services that don't have a clinically validated reason behind them. And third, you must submit entirely error-free data. Medicare's system is highly automated and super sophisticated, so there is exactly zero margin for sloppy data entry or mismatched demographics. And that brings us to what we call the zero-tolerance, incomplete rule. The source material spells this out so explicitly, saying any claim that is sent in with mistakes or is missing necessary information will not be processed. Period. Now, I need every coder and biller listening to hear this loud and clear. There is absolutely no room for negotiation on missing clinical info. If you submit a claim with an incorrect modifier, an invalid diagnosis code, or, hey, even just missing patient details, Medicare is going to reject it outright. You won't get a pass, you're not going to get a friendly phone call asking for clarification, it simply will not be processed.
Moving on to Section 2, Compliance with NCCI edits.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that once your data is totally flawless, your claim faces its next massive hurdle in the adjudication workflow, and that is the automated scrutiny of your coding combinations. The National Correct Coding Initiative, or NCCI, essentially functions as this relentless digital checkpoint. Basically, the NCCI is a set of coding modifications that Medicare follows with extreme care. The whole purpose here is to prevent improper unbundling. You know, when a provider bills separately for procedures that really should just be grouped under a single code. Medicare uses these edits to make sure that only the most accurate, standardized code combinations actually make it through the system. If your codes conflict with NCCI rules, boom, your claim hits a brick wall.
Looking directly at the source material, it explicitly highlights just how careful Medicare is to follow these NCCI modifications, as well as their standards for medical necessity. This really reinforces just how polished and regimented their handling process actually is. They've built a digital infrastructure that is literally designed to catch improper billing the millisecond it enters their database.
Up next, Section 3, Congressional Distribution Guidelines and the Statutory Payment Floor. So how does this all build into the financial phase of the life cycle? Well, you have to understand that Medicare's payout timelines aren't just some arbitrary administrative policies. No, they are strict laws passed by the United States Congress. Even if your claim sails perfectly through those NCCI edits, you aren't getting paid immediately. Your claim is now subject to the payment floor. This is a federally mandated, predetermined minimum amount of time that absolutely must pass before Medicare is legally allowed to finalize and release your payment. The government simply will not disperse those funds until the specific dates of service have successfully reached and cleared this statutory waiting window.
To really put this into perspective, think about your standard commercial insurance companies. Now, while commercial payers definitely have their own processing timelines, those are generally pretty flexible, right? They're dictated by corporate policy or your specific provider contracts. But Medicare? Entirely different beast. Medicare operates on a rigid, congressionally mandated statutory payment floor. Do you think you can just call them up and ask a supervisor to rush a payment? Absolutely not. The law dictates the timeline, and everyone just has to wait.
Let's look at Section 4, Electronic Funds Transfer, or EFT, and Payment Reliability. So, once that payment floor waiting period has successfully elapsed, we finally arrive at the actual disbursement of funds. Electronic funds transfer is Medicare's primary, absolutely preferred method of reimbursement. Really, the ultimate goal of this entire clean claim lifecycle is the EFT. The old days of waiting for a physical paper check to arrive in the mail? Yeah, they are largely obsolete in this context. EFT is rapid, it's efficient, and it goes straight to you.
And this brilliantly illustrates why, despite all of those rigid rules, Medicare is actually highly respected from a cash flow perspective. Rapid EFT disbursements completely consolidate Medicare's image as a highly dependable payer. They settle the vast majority of claims without any incident whatsoever. But, and this is a massive but, this only applies if your claims are filed properly in the first place. If you play by their strict rules, they're going to deposit the money directly into your account exactly when that statutory payment floor allows.
All right, Section 5, adhering to contractor preferences.
Now we're pivoting to the regional administrative layer. Because understanding the federal rules, that's really only half the battle. Let me be incredibly clear about this. Medicare is not going to adapt to the demands or workflows of your specific medical practice. You, as the provider, must bend to Medicare's technical preferences for claim submission. If a regional contractor wants a claim submitted in a highly specific digital format, you conform to that format. Expecting the federal government to accommodate your office's unique billing quirks? That is a guaranteed fast-track to massive claim denials.
And this brings us to MACs, or Medicare Administrative Contractors. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, they set the nationwide rules, but they partner with private businesses, these MACs, to handle the actual day-to-day processing of claims on a regional level. And these MACs have some serious authority. When there isn't a national coverage rule for a specific procedure, or maybe if a national rule just needs a bit more definition, these MACs actually have the power to create local coverage determinations, or LCDs.
The source text clearly defines the role of these MACs. If you want your claims to be accurate, you have to strictly adhere to your specific regional MAC's preferences and their local coverage decisions. Seriously, if your MAC decides they won't cover a service, you need to know that well in advance so you can have the patient sign an Advance Beneficiary Notice, or ABN, that acknowledges they'll be financially responsible. If you ignore regional MAC rules, you're going to face localized, incredibly frustrating denials.
Finally, Section 6, Summary and Next Steps.
So the crucial point is this: successfully finalizing a Medicare claim requires your strict adherence to a very specific life cycle. You've got to master the zero-tolerance incomplete rule by submitting flawless data. You absolutely must comply with NCCI edits to prevent unbundling. You have to patiently wait for that congressional statutory payment floor to clear. Only then will you receive those reliable, rapid EFT disbursements. And throughout this entire process, you must strictly follow the technical preferences of your regional MAC.
Understanding these rigid mechanisms is exactly what ensures your practice maintains a steady, reliable revenue cycle with the federal government. Up next in our curriculum, we're going to move on to Part 10, where we'll examine the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, commonly known as the ACA, and we'll decode the state and federal structure of Medicaid. It's going to be a fascinating next step in our Explainer series. But until then, I want you to ask yourself, is your office truly prepared to adapt to Medicare's uncompromising rules, or are you literally leaving revenue on the table? Like, share, subscribe to Decode Healthcare with Harshal.